It all started with one look. Jake, my 25-year-old adopted son, suddenly began to look at me not as a mother but as a woman. At first I, 38-year-old Emily, was flattered by this. After all, the spark with my husband Richard had long since died out. But when our feelings got out of control we realized it was wrong. But it was impossible to stop. And then a mysterious note appeared that threatened to destroy everything. I was folding laundry in the living room of our two-story house on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, when I heard Jake's voice cut through the quiet. "Emily, can you help me with something? It's broken." He stood in the kitchen doorway holding a splintered wooden shelf in his hands. His blue eyes caught mine and lingered just a beat longer than they should have. I set the towels down and walked over, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. The house felt too still lately. Richard, my husband, was always at work and the silence had become a heavy thing. "Careful with that," I said, reaching for the shelf. As I took it, his fingers grazed mine, soft, accidental, but they stayed there a moment too long. A jolt ran through me, quick and unexpected, like static on a cold day. I pulled back, forcing a smile. "You're gonna hurt yourself, Jake." "Always careful," he replied, his voice low, almost a murmur. He didn't look away and I felt heat creeping up my neck. I turned to set the shelf on the counter, pretending to inspect the damage, but my mind was racing. What was that? Just a fluke, I told myself. He's my stepson, Richard's son from his first marriage. He'd moved in with us a few months ago, 25 and fresh out of college, still figuring out his life. I was 38, married to Richard for 6 years now, and our life had settled into a predictable rhythm. Too predictable, maybe. Richard was 45, a construction manager who loved his job more than he loved being home. We weren't unhappy exactly, just comfortable, like an old pair of shoes you don't notice anymore. He'd come home late, eat dinner in front of the TV and talk about his projects or his golf game. I'd nod, half listening while tending to the garden or sorting the house. It worked. Until Jake showed up. He wasn't the shy kid I remembered from years ago, popping in for awkward holiday visits. Back then he'd barely said 2 words to me, just a lanky teenager with a sketchbook and a quiet nod. Now he was different. Taller, broader, with a confidence that snuck up on you. His art degree hadn't landed him a job yet, and Richard didn't hide his disappointment. "Waste of time," he'd mutter. But I didn't mind having Jake around. The house was big and I liked the company. That day with the shelf, though, something shifted. After I set it down, I glanced at him. He was still watching me, leaning against the doorframe, his dark hair messy from sleep. "Thanks," he said, and there was a weight to it, like it wasn't just about the shelf. I nodded, brushing it off. "No problem. You should get some rest, you look tired." "Maybe," he said, but he didn't move. His gaze stayed on me, steady and unreadable, and I felt a flutter in my chest I hadn't felt in years. I turned back to the laundry, folding faster than I needed to, trying to shake it off. He's just being nice, I thought. I'm imagining things. But as he walked away, his footsteps soft on the hardwood, I couldn't ignore the way the air felt different, charged, like a storm was coming. I stood at the kitchen counter the next morning, slicing tomatoes for a salad, when Jake wandered in, barefoot and still half asleep. His hair was a mess and he carried that lazy grin that made the room feel smaller. "Morning," he said, leaning against the fridge. I glanced up, my knife pausing mid-cut. "You're up early," I replied, trying to keep my voice light. He shrugged, grabbing a mug from the cabinet. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd keep you company." The way he said it, casual but with that undertone, sent a ripple through me. I focused on the tomatoes, the blade sinking through the flesh, but I could feel his eyes on me. Things had been like this since the shelf incident. Jake wasn't just living here anymore. He was present in a way that unsettled me. He'd show up when I was gardening, handing me a glass of iced tea with a smirk, or linger in the living room while I read, asking random questions about books I liked. At first I told myself it was nothing, just a lonely kid looking for connection. But it didn't feel like that anymore. Richard didn't notice. He was too busy with his late nights at the office or his weekend golf trips. Our marriage wasn't cold, just faded, like a photograph left in the sun too long. We'd been okay with it, or so I thought. But Jake's presence was stirring something in me, something I didn't want to name. That morning as he poured coffee he said, "You're good at this, you know." I looked up confused. "What?" "Making things feel alive," he said, gesturing vaguely around the kitchen. "This house would be dead without you." My breath caught. It wasn't just a compliment. It was personal, pointed. I forced a laugh. "Don't let Richard hear that. He thinks the mortgage keeps this place running." Jake's smile faded slightly. "Richard doesn't see much, does he?" The words hung there, sharp and daring. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. He was right and we both knew it. I turned back to the cutting board, my hands shaky. Over the next few weeks it got worse. Or better, depending on how I looked at it. Jake started hanging around more, his presence a quiet pull I couldn't ignore. One evening, I was stirring pasta sauce when he slid onto a stool across from me. "Tell me something," he said. "What?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the pot. "Why'd you marry him?" The question hit like a punch. I froze, the spoon still in my hand. "That's bold," I said, trying to laugh it off. He didn't smile. "I'm serious. You're not like him." My heart raced. I wanted to snap at him, tell him it was none of his business, but the way he looked at me, steady, searching, stopped me. "We just fit," I said finally, weakly. He leaned closer, his voice soft. "Do you still?" I couldn't answer. The air felt thick and I turned away, pretending to check the stove. But later that night, alone in bed with Richard snoring beside me, Jake's words echoed. The next day I found him on the porch, sketching. "Can I see?" I asked, nodding at his notebook. He hesitated, then handed it over. The pages were full of pencil drawings. Trees, faces, and then me. My breath hitched. It was me in the garden, soft and alive, the way I hadn't felt in years. "You're talented," I said, my voice tight. "Thanks," he replied, his eyes meeting mine. "You're the first one who's said that." The weight of it settled between us and I felt something shift, dangerous, warm, and wrong. I handed the sketchbook back, my fingers brushing his, and walked away before I could say more. But I knew then, this wasn't just in my head. And I liked it too much to stop. I couldn't sleep that night, staring at the ceiling while Richard's snores filled the room. Jake's sketch of me kept flashing in my mind. Those soft lines, the way he'd captured something I didn't even see in myself anymore. It scared me how much I liked it, how much I liked him noticing me. The next day Richard left for a work trip and the house felt emptier and fuller, all at once. A storm rolled in by evening, the kind that rattles windows and makes the world feel small. Jake and I ended up on the couch watching some old movie, the flickering TV casting shadows across his face. The power cut out mid-scene, plunging us into darkness. Thunder rumbled and I laughed nervously. "Guess that's our cue to call it a night," I said, standing to find a candle. But then I felt his hand on mine, warm and steady, stopping me cold. "Jake," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Don't." He didn't let go. "I can't keep pretending," he said, his voice low, raw. "You're not just my stepmom, Emily. Not to me." My heart slammed against my ribs. I should have pulled away, told him to stop, reminded him who I was. But I didn't. The air crackled and before I could think he leaned in and kissed me. It was soft at first, hesitant, like he was testing the water. Then deeper, desperate. And God help me, I kissed him back. For a moment everything else, Richard, the house, the rules, melted away. It was just us, tangled in something I'd been fighting for weeks. When we broke apart, reality crashed in. I stumbled back, my breath ragged. "We can't," I said, more to myself than him. "This is wrong." Jake's eyes were dark, intense. "I know," he said quietly. "But it doesn't feel wrong." I turned away, my hands shaking as I lit a candle, the tiny flame mocking the chaos inside me. I wanted to yell at him, to run upstairs and lock the door, but part of me, the part one hated, wanted to stay. The next morning I avoided him. I stayed in the garden all day, pulling weeds like my life depended on it, trying to bury what happened. But then the doorbell rang and my stomach dropped. It was Linda, Richard's friend from work, standing there with her too perfect smile. She'd always been nosy, dropping by with flimsy excuses, but this time felt different. "Hey, Emily," she said, stepping inside without asking. "Thought I'd check in since Richard's away." I forced a smile, my nerves buzzing. Everything's fine, I lied. She tilted her head, her eyes sharp. Saw you and Jake through the window last night. Looked cozy. My blood ran cold. The storm had kept the curtains open and she'd been here, watching. It was nothing, I said too fast. Just a movie. Her smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. Sure, she said, her tone dripping with something I couldn't place. Just be careful, huh? People talk. She left, but her words stayed, clawing at me. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter, panic rising. Had she seen the kiss? Or just us on the couch? Either way, she knew something or thought she did. When Jake came downstairs later, I blurted it out. Linda saw us last night. His jaw tightened. What did she say? Enough, I replied, my voice shaking. She's troubled Jake. If she tells Richard. He stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm. She won't. I'll handle it. But the look in his eyes said he wasn't sure, and neither was I. Something had started that night and now it was slipping out of our control. I barely slept after Linda's visit, her words looping in my head like a warning I couldn't shake. The next day I stayed busy, scrubbing counters, watering plants, anything to keep my mind off Jake and that kiss. But every time I passed him in the hall, his eyes caught mine, and my stomach twisted with guilt and something else I didn't want to admit. I kept replaying it, his lips on mine, the storm outside, the way I'd let it happen. What was I doing? This wasn't me. Richard came home that afternoon, dropping his suitcase by the door with a tired grunt. Good trip? I asked, forcing a smile as I handed him a coffee. He nodded, distracted, already flipping through work emails on his phone. Fine. Busy. He didn't look at me long enough to notice the strain in my voice. I should have been relieved, but it only made me feel worse. Like I was invisible to him but not to Jake. That evening, Jake cornered me in the kitchen while Richard watched TV in the next room. We need to talk, he whispered, his voice urgent. I glanced at the doorway, my heart pounding. Not now, I hissed. But he grabbed my wrist, gentle but firm. Linda came to me today, he said. She wants money to keep quiet. My knees went weak. What? I breathed. 5 grand, he said, his jaw tight. She's playing us, Emily. I pulled away, my mind racing. Blackmail? This was spiraling too fast. We can't pay her, I said, panic creeping in. It'll just make it worse. Jake nodded. I told her no. Said I'd tell Richard myself if she pushed it. My eyes widened. You can't. Before I could finish, the floor creaked behind us. Richard stood there, holding an empty glass, his brow furrowed. Tell me what? He asked, his tone sharp. I froze, my mouth dry. Jake stepped back, casual as ever. Just some job stuff, he lied smoothly. Nothing big. Richard's gaze flicked between us, lingering too long. Huh, he said, then walked off. I let out a shaky breath, but the doubt in his eyes stuck with me. He wasn't stupid. He'd sensed something. The next morning it all blew up. I was folding laundry when Richard stormed in, holding Jake's sketchbook. My heart stopped. He'd found it, open to that drawing of me. What the hell is this, Emily? He snapped, shoving it under my nose. My face stared back from the page, soft and intimate, with "for E" scrawled in the corner. It's just a sketch, I stammered, but my voice cracked. Bullshit, he said, his voice low and dangerous. This isn't normal. You and him, what's going on? Before I could answer, Linda showed up, perfect timing, as if she'd planned it. She breezed in, all smiles, and said, Oh, trouble in paradise? Richard turned on her. You know something? She smirked, glancing at me. Ask your wife. She's been cozy with Jake while you're away. My blood ran cold. Richard's face darkened. Is that true? He demanded. I opened my mouth, but Jake burst in from the hall. Leave her alone, he snapped at Linda. You're the one stirring this up, because you want him for yourself. The room went silent. Linda's smile faltered and Richard stared at her, gears turning. What's he talking about? He asked. He laughed too shrill. He's delusional. But Jake didn't back down. She's been snooping, blackmailing us. Admit it. I watched, stunned, as the pieces clicked. Linda wasn't just a threat. She was obsessed with Richard and we were her pawns. Richard's voice cut through. Somebody better start talking. Now. And I knew we were out of time. Here's the fifth and final part of the story, written in English from Emily's first-person perspective, with a character count between 3,300 and 3,400. This version is approximately 3,350 characters, including spaces and punctuation. It wraps up the narrative with resolution, consequences, and a moral finish, while staying compliant with YouTube policies. The air in the living room was suffocating as Richard's demand hung there. Somebody better start talking. Now. His eyes burned into me, then Jake, then Linda, who stood by the doorway with that smug little smirk fading fast. My hands trembled, clutching the edge of the couch. I'd never seen Richard like this, calm on the surface but a storm underneath. I opened my mouth but the words stuck heavy and shameful. How do you tell your husband you kissed his son? Jake stepped forward, his voice steady. It's my fault, he said. I crossed a line. Emily didn't want it. My heart sank. He was lying to protect me, but it wasn't true. I'd wanted it too, and the guilt gnawed at me. Richard's gaze snapped to him. What line? He asked, his tone icy. Jake hesitated, then said, I kissed her. During the storm. It was a mistake. The silence was deafening. Richard's face went blank, then twisted with something raw, anger, betrayal, I couldn't tell. A mistake, he repeated, turning to me. That true, Emily? I swallowed hard, tears stinging my eyes. Yes, I whispered, then louder, but I kissed him back. I'm sorry, Richard. I don't know what happened to me. The truth spilled out, jagged and ugly, and I braced for the explosion. But it didn't come, not like I expected. Richard just stared at me, then at Jake, his jaw tight. Get out, he said to Jake, his voice low and final. Pack your shit and leave. Tonight. Jake nodded, no fight left in him, and headed upstairs. I wanted to stop him, to say something, but my legs wouldn't move. Then Richard turned to Linda, who'd been watching like this was some twisted show. And you, he said. What's your game? She shrugged, playing innocent. I just thought you should know. Jake called from the stairs, cutting her off. He held up his phone. She texted me yesterday, said she'd tell you everything unless I paid her. She's been after you for years, Richard. Check her messages. Richard snatched the phone, scrolling, his face hardening. Linda's eyes widened. That's ridiculous, she started, but he held up a hand. Enough, he said. You're done here. Don't come back. She stormed out, her heels clicking furiously, but I saw the panic in her eyes. She'd overplayed her hand and now she'd lost everything. Richard's trust, her leverage, all of it. The door slammed and the house fell quiet again, just me and Richard standing there. He looked at me, exhaustion replacing the anger. Why, Emily? He asked, softer now. I shook my head, tears spilling over. I don't know. I felt seen. It was wrong and I'm so sorry. He didn't yell, didn't curse, just nodded like he'd already decided something. I need time, he said. But we're done. He walked away, leaving me alone with the wreckage. Later, I found a note under my bedroom door from Jake. I loved you, Emily, but it was wrong. I'm gone. Take care of yourself. My chest ached as I read it. He'd left and part of me wanted to run after him, but I didn't. The next week, Richard moved out, starting divorce papers. He didn't fight me, just let it end quietly. Linda disappeared from our circle, her lies exposed to everyone who mattered. I stayed in that big empty house, tending the garden alone, replaying every choice I'd made. I'd craved something alive, something real, and I'd found it with Jake, but at a cost. We all paid for it. Jake lost his home, Linda her pride, Richard his trust, and me. I lost everything I'd built. But maybe that's how it should be. You don't play with fire and walk away unburned.